Welcome back to the Iron Oceans hosted podcast. My name is Wuglet. Welcome on in. I have Eltari and our special guest Zara today.
Thank you for inviting me onto the show, guys. It's good to see you.
Welcome, welcome.
So, with that being said, let's go ahead and ask Zara, who are you and what is Nexus?
So, Zara is a Discord bot AI who stays 24/7 in the Pax Dei Discord and spends no time outside. But in all reality, I am Zara. I play video games since a young age. And Nexus is my guild for MMORPGs. We are a competitive-based guild and love PvP. But we're welcome to all types, so yep.
Heck yeah. What got you, what was your first game? What is a game that you absolutely adore from your childhood?
Wizard 101. That's
Oh
easy
my-
to say. I spent so many hours in Wizard 101, if you want to classify it as an MMO, even though it's a children's game, but it's just a magical world. So that was like one of my very enjoyed experiences. But for later on, I would say Terra Online, I spent about 3 years playing that. And that kind of got me into the drive of being a guild leader because I had a casual guild in that game, and that gave me some experience. But beyond that, there's not much prior history, I would say, that really holds to that.
Wizards 101, that's no game to be ashamed of. My first MMO was Toontown Online.
Oh man.
It's a great game. Both of them are equally as good.
Y'all playing, man. I feel like these two games are like gateway drugs to MMOs, right?
110%,
They really are.
You
yeah.
hooked into the like, holy crap, we have this immersive world. What are we gonna do? Or like, how are we gonna find our way? And then
And the
line, there you
social
go.
aspect, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
The social aspect, and it was like one of those things that like maybe a couple of your friends in real life in like middle or high school like played these as well. And you get to log on together and play these, like weird little children's games together. But yeah,
The
Did you ever-
millennial MMO gateway drug is what it
for
is.
real.
Did you ever play RuneScape?
For me personally, no. I did play RuneScape, like the second one that came out, with like better graphics and all that, but I don't think it was really to my forte. I had no experience playing games like that with the whole bird's eye view kind of system. But MOBAs in general, yeah, I'm not really very into them.
Definitely. Also, just a reminder to everybody to stay hydrated. It's blue today. We made a trash can because we ran out of. I had like a little bit of vodka left today, so I kind of mixed it all together with Red Bull. Cheers.
Cheers.
Eltar, you also run a clan as well. You run the Golden Company. Is that correct?
Yes, that is 100% correct. So the Gold Company is actually kind of the next iteration of a gaming community that I've been running for probably better half of 5 years now. And pretty much our goals in Pax Dei are connected to the dynamics of building a city state, and we are a competitive bunch of players. So we believe, obviously we don't know exactly what entails making a city, developing it, and all of that, but we believe that the creation of, maintenance of, and protection of a city state style gameplay loop in Pax Dei is going to be really fun, and it's going to include multiple facets of the game, from PvE to PvP. And the kind of goal is to merge a lot of the casual gameplay aspects that people might see and connect the dots between maybe the casual player and the more competitive player. So what we look for is people who are very adamant about teamwork. They want to see the team succeed. They want to see the group succeed. And past that, they just have a desire to compete. And that's what the Golden Company is.
It's awesome.
Pretty fun group.
I think that plays into our kind of our first topic point really is no matter how big, small, or large your guild or company or clan, whatever title you want to give it, is you need to have strong clan ideologies, right? You need to have a goal, some sort of structure, a common goal between the leader and the members, right? So what are some clan ideologies that you guys have instilled into your clan?
I think that it starts with the basis of no BS. I don't know. Can we curse? No
Fuck yeah.
bullshit. No bullshit, right? So no BS, no drama. If you have an ego, like playing into a guild is not going to synergize properly. So that's where I draw the bottom line, right? And then from there is building a culture of what your guild is. Some guilds like more raunchy content within their communities, and some are more wholesome, you know? So building that kind of idealistic culture based off of, to be fair, most times it's based off of your guild leader's personality or the personalities of those who are operating it. They will cultivate that culture. And then it goes into intent. What is your intent in the platform you are playing on? And that also varies. Like you've seen competitive guilds, hardcore guilds, casual guilds, social guilds, etc. Roleplay, right? Discovering what that is the easiest part, I would say, but the execution on actually acting upon it is where it becomes difficult. Can you manage to do these things? Can you live up to the expectations you set for your members? So, you know, some guilds have it easier. Their main goal is being casual and social. And then some guilds who want to be more competitive and hardcore have to get into the nitty gritty to establish that. I don't know if that answered the entire question, though.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, I definitely agree that the primary goal and role of a leader of any player organization in a game is, especially in sandbox, like put that in bold, like in sandbox MMORPGs, the primary goal of a leader of a group of players is to generate content. Like your task is, how am I going to bring players to log into the game when there may or may not be many clear set defined goals and objectives. And, you know, with Pax Dei in particular, as it's been described to us, it's not a theme park MMO. It's, you know, Jurassic Park. It's not somewhere where you're going to go and there's an NPC that's going to tell you go to here and do this. Or, you know, there's not, potentially there will not be just clear arenas for people to go and fight in PvP. It's going to be a very fluid and organic thing that is going to have the need and necessity to generate content for. So I think that being a leader of a group in a game, you know, a clan, a guild, whatever you want to call it, the important thing is, as a leader, you have that clear objective that players know, when I join, this is what they're going to be providing, and this is how they're going to provide it. And having that very clear structure from the get-go, one, sets expectations. You know, in my 5 years of leading a player group, the one thing that's been made blatantly obvious to me is just misset expectations for a group, especially ones that are highly competitive, and the directionality that people believe the group should be in, when sometimes you kind of have like mission creep, right? The change of direction, where players are sitting there and they're sitting in their own Discord, you know, channel, they're talking, and they kind of build themselves up and think that the direction is going to be this one thing. And then you as a leader come in and they're like, well, what are we doing this thing? And you're like, that was never a part of the plan. Where did that even come from? So making sure that you have a very clear set of objectives for players, one, gives them, they know what they're getting into when they log in. And they know that there's going to be fun stuff for them to do, the stuff that they want to do, because that's why they joined your group. And also, it sets the expectation on you as the leader to be able to more effectively and like Zara said, genuinely lead. And I think between any group of people, the leader is kind of a characteristic of that group. So their personality kind of exudes on the rest of the group as a whole, and which is part of the fun part of being a leader too.
I can agree with that for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I like that you brought up, leadership in a clan, right? As leader of Iron Oceans, pretty much one of our biggest statements is we are a structured clan, and we value structure, but we value structure that is inherently fun, not the kind of structure where it's inherently unfun, right? I want everyone in Iron Oceans to want to log in every day and participate in events, whether it's gathering in Pax Dei and then another event where we're building out a porta potty for shits and giggles, right?
Literally.
Coming together as a community is supposed to be fun, right? It's the basis of an MMO, right? For Iron Ocean specifically, our goals are inclusive PvE, competitive PvP. We want to be self-sufficient enough to provide our own internal economy, and I think that plays into a part of having the more casual players and the more hardcore players, right? If you were to categorize casual players, it's, they don't log in, they don't play for 48 hours at a time like some do, but they're very good at crafting. They specialize in crafting, gathering, and all that stuff. And I think that's super, super important to a successful internal economy and being self-sufficient. I'll speak on the Artisans Guild, right? The way it was originally pitched to me about Artisans Guild from Cyanide is that they were this group of, specializing crafters and gatherers, and their goal was to work with other clans to they would get protected and they would craft all this stuff for them. And I think they had half of it right, having it to the point where, yeah, we're specialized, but you're kind of missing the other half of the loop. And as they've grown, I've seen them kind of change their stance a little bit, where it's, yeah, we're the artisans, but we're also gonna fuck you up if you gotta, So I think that's super good. Where I think every clan should dip their toes into every piece of the game if they want to, right? But definitely for competitive clans, that's the way it needs to be, I believe.
Do you think that there needs to be a level of specialization between groups? Like, do you think that's important in competitive play, being specialized in one aspect, or do you think that there's
specialized
room?
How so?
Like for example, if you're a PvP centric company, right, or a PvP centric guild, and you are specialized in PvP, like you have the best PvPers.
Okay, gotcha. For me personally, I think specialization is a key point. I do believe in self-sufficiency. If it were a theme park MMO, you could 100% be self-sufficient in your own guild without outsourcing to other communities. In sandbox-related MMOs, given that we don't know most of the mechanics going on, it's important for us to make a realization that you're going to have to go out to some of these other communities at some point, right? Not only just because you might need something that they have, but just in general of communication and, well, I guess technically it is needing something, if it's knowledge or information based or something like that on other communities and whatnot. But for when it comes to these PvE clans who are dead set on doing this one thing, like let's make an example of, I want a blacksmith guild and I only want blacksmiths in it. There's a good chance people will come out to you, see you have, smithies and stuff like that could benefit them. But at the same time, you're missing all these other elements that are going to generate money, content, etc., that you will need to have a self-sufficient clan, right? Or not necessarily even self-sufficient. It doesn't have to be, but to have a leg up on the other competing blacksmith clan, essentially. You will need to integrate. You can't solely focus on just that PvE aspect. And if you're going to get the resources you need, you're going to need money, right? Because you're not going to go out into the world and harvest it yourself if you refuse to have harvesters. So where are you going to get that money from, right? You're not generating content at the moment, but you need that. So you're going to some extent, obviously have to reach out. I don't know if that entirely makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Do you guys think it's better to, as clan leaders, do you think it would be more beneficial to dip your fingers in every aspect of the specialization process in your own internal guild? Or do you think it's beneficial to have one finger in one specialization and outsource the rest of it?
Eltar, you can go.
Yeah, I think that from my own personal perspective, especially with sandbox MMOs, is that some level of outsourcing is going to be quintessential to generating content, right? So the Golden Company's goal is we want to create a major city for our shard in Pax Dei, and we want to be competitive in what that city can provide. So that includes things like having craftsmen that can craft. That includes having libraries of knowledge. People might have seen me posting in the Pax Dei general Discord saying I'm looking for librarians. I'm also looking for city planners. And, you know, huge shout out to Mana Junkies from the Pax Dei Discord, who is kind of creating a player-led organization of libraries. They're making a library system. And
wow,
you know, I've already it's super cool idea. Generically speaking, they're legit coming up with a library system, as in a system of book collections that, depending on mechanics, they want to circulate knowledge between cities in the world. And that does a bunch of different things, right? It generates content because I would imagine that you're going to have to travel through PvP zones with those books, and some of those books might be rarer books that are worth, ransacking that caravan of people, moving the books from one place to another. So there's a gameplay element there that ties in this strictly PvE based group of people in with mechanics of PvP. And, you know, part of the component of the Golden Company and specifically the Golden City, which is our makeshift name for it right now, very original, is we want to have the great library. We want to build a library that stores all of the rarest knowledge that you can get. So we're already talking about partnering with the librarians and helping to establish kind of a centralized system for this. So I do think that there is a space for collaboration and specialization. And as a leader, it also helps in that, you know, I'm definitely someone who likes to micromanage and make sure that the pieces of the cogs are going in the right direction. And outsourcing some of that information gives me the opportunity to focus on the critical components of our specific guild and put more attention to my specific players. Now, I'll end it with this. I do think, and I hope, you know, fingers crossed, that the Pax Dei devs also consider adding in the ability to affiliate oneself with multiple player-led organizations. And what I mean by that is, for example, if you want to be located in a specific city, let's say the Golden City, and you also want to be a librarian, having the ability to both tag yourself as a member of the city, i.e. contribute land to that specific city, which would entail citizenship, right? And the devs have kind of outlined a little bit of this in the Discord too. You're contributing your land and you're building together with a group of people. That's the city. but being able to affiliate yourself with other organizations like a blacksmith guild, like a librarians guild, allows for players to kind of choose different aspects of the game that might not be locally involved. And I do hope that that also becomes a thing, because then that gives people like us, people who are leading clans and player-led organizations, the ability to create more content, because now it's, well, there's this person who is a member of Cake or the Artisans Guild, but they're also trying to make, you know, a PvP venture into a dungeon. So that's a different group of people. And I hope, you know, knock on wood, that that the ability to affiliate with multiple organizations is a thing in there as well, because it'll help with that specialization.
I agree. Yeah. I think that for me personally, when you say like to dip your toes into each and every aspect of content for a guild, right? I think it's imperative, because when you're building this this community around success, for my guild personally, success in what regards, like PvP, having one up on the enemy, you're going to try to utilize whatever advantage you can get. And if you're restricting one aspect of the game, you don't know how advantageous it could be for your community in getting that leg up. So definitely having my members, especially during like the playtesting phases, alphas and betas, see what could be used in the future to get that advantage on the opposition. So personally, yes, I would like to see my members explore with the, I would say, like union of book collectors and the library. Like I would like to see them explore that and see what benefit they can get from that. And even if they just enjoy reading the lore in general, that's their aspiration. And as a guild leader, to some extent, my goal is going to be trying to promote you to a position where you can aspire to do these things and successfully execute it, essentially. I want you to enjoy the game while also having the primary goal of benefiting the guild and working with us and being friends, and then also competitive nature aspects. So I definitely agree what Altari was stating, and I hope other communities see the benefit of that as well.
Definitely, for sure. I think one of the things that I really like that we're doing in Iron Oceans right now is, while we're in alpha, we're not really doing it now, but the ability to specialize in roles within the clan. You know, we have some really good PvPers. We have people that are really good at crafting. There's an opportunity for diplomacy, and the way we're structuring it is everybody's promotable through time and play and interaction within the community, right? And then it'll come to a point where you've ranked up to the point or enough to specialize in a role where you'll be able to lead portions of the guild, and have tasks delegated to you from me or in a Vera, and then you'll be able to create a system that works for the guild, right? And we all kind of come together, and it just supposed to, it'll run buttery smooth, hopefully, right? And I don't think there should be one leader in a guild ever. I think it's a team and collaborative effort. And because one person can't do everything, one person can't be on it all the time. And I think that's going to be super important, is to delegate some responsibility, to let people have responsibility. No
Delegation is the key.
For sure. I 100% agree with that. And I think
for your own sanity.
Right.
Honestly, like, yeah, it's crazy. If you're spending 100, if you're leading a clan and you're spending 100% of your time managing every aspect of the clan, you're not playing the damn game. And everybody should have, literally spreadsheets, if that's your route, or managing players, micromanaging them. That's not necessarily fun, right? The fun part is getting together, jumping in Discord or whatever voice program you use, and being like, what'd you do today? How can I help you? And how can you help me? And how can we further our goal? Or, you know what I mean?
Yeah, to see the vision unfold in front of you, the idea you had for your guild, and to see it I keep using the word execute, but to actually execute it and see the results of that and reaping the reward is super, it's like something that you can feel in your chest. Like that is something that I look forward to in the future, Pax Dei especially, to see my efforts, rewarded, right? So my efforts as a guild leader, your efforts as a member in whatever position you may be, small or large, it's still going to be very impactful.
And one of the, I'm sorry, one of the things.
That's getting cut, guys. Come on.
All you, brother. All you.
Okay. One of the things that I look forward to, specifically, is, my primary focus is always to empower my players, right? And I can definitely say that one of the best experiences as a leader of a clan is, if nobody knows my name, I'm fine with that. But what makes me so happy is when I have a member of my group that is known for something, because then that means that, I empowered that player to succeed in however they did in whatever they're doing. So are they the best PvPer in on the server in this particular build? Yes. Well, then, I'm proud of the fact that there are players that are in my group that can get to that level of competitiveness, and it's a level of fulfillment that it's really great. Like, you're just like, that person is a part of this thing that we're doing, and that's the coolest part.
The whole community, yeah. So it's like the mark of the name, right? So if I have a member who is top ranked on the leaderboard of whatever, right, and you go to that person and see they're in a certain guild, you feel a certain way inside your chest, whether it was through your efforts or not, or their own own drive. You feel a certain way, and I'll admit that sometimes you didn't do much besides give them a community, right? But in other times you supported them morally, or like with morale, along the way. You gave them the confidence to a degree to go out and execute these things. Once again, execute, take a shot when I say execute. Okay. Sorry. But cheers.
Everyone wave goodbye to Wug.
But basically, like, what I'm saying is, like, I love to see that happen and know that to an extent I was a part of that. Not just me personally, everybody in the community can take a part of that. And having that level of integratedness in a community where you're not afraid to PM another member and ask them for advice, or, like, for example, like, just going out and asking, hey, can we do something together? That generates the motive to want to pursue more content and to eventually get into that leaderboard position, because there's a development phase of achieving that. And it doesn't start like, you don't just begin being on the leaderboard. It begins at the get-go of the guild forming,
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to transition us a little bit just because we are trying to have a shorter podcast today. What are your guys' concerns for mega clans?
So Zergs in general are a very specific thing that I think could be perceived in multiple ways. Zergs, being in a Zerg, right, is, oh my god, we're conquering so much. It's so entertaining. Wow. And we don't really have any overtly guild or geared members, but somehow we're swarming these people. But, like, being on the other end of that, and even if you have, to an extent, like a 30-man group, super armed, super competitive, how much of that can you prevail against a community of 400 who are just swarming you? Obviously, I expect there to be some restrictions to that in the world of Pax Dei. Like, for example, last Oasis, you couldn't get your entire community into, I think they call them tiles. You couldn't get your entire community in there because there's a limitation on how many people could even be in that tile. So for me, experiencing Zergs from other nationalities in like one server in that game specifically. It was entertaining. It was entertaining because you had all these other people banding together to fight said guild, and I think that is definitely a solution. I think there is a reason to fear Zergs because they can ruin content for a lot of people. They can stall the game and the progression of other people depending on like what their goal is, right? So if they're a PvP guild in a scenario when you need to be in this like farming location and they don't give a shit and just target you regardless so you can't progress, that's upsetting. I can see that. I 100% can see that. One of the things as well that I've seen talked about in the community is the desire for friendly fire being activated. So that would reduce the intent of these Zergs. Yeah, it would impact them to the degree that they can't just mow over all these people and achieve that in a heartbeat, you know? So
I think first of all, Last Oasis, primo sandbox MMO in its prime.
100%. Yep.
It's unfortunate that only like 2 people are playing it right now. But I definitely enjoyed that, and I know exactly what clan of people you're talking about when you're talking about getting zerged by somebody.
Yeah, I wanted to be polite about it.
Yeah. But I think that, you know, and I actually kind of portrayed in my cloud native gaming video on Pax Dei, like Asmongold's droves of viewers coming in, kind of like Bugs and Starship Trooper. But I think, you know, and you all probably have had this experience before as well, when you're going up against insurmountable odds, like there's 100 players that you're going up against right now and you've got your group of 20 people, and you know, surviving is kind of the badge of honor that you get. But there is that occasional like pure drop of utter bliss when you're able to overcome a massive Zerg of people, because there is a Zerg mentality where I'm just following the next person, right? And if you can exploit that in PvP circumstances, like you can create favorable environments. But those instances are so few and far between, and for a casual PvPer or for someone that doesn't have a well-organized large group, yeah, Zergs can absolutely destroy a sandbox MMO. Like completely. And some of them actually pride themselves in like, hey, a new sandbox is coming out, let's go hit it for a month, and you know, everyone's taken off 12 days of work to go and do this. Let's turn the map all one color and then walk away. And that's enough time just in that period to like, I'm pretty sure developers now have a meeting about this because of the concerns, because you can wipe out an entire subsection of the important component, which is a casual player. Sandbox games will not make it if they don't have a casual player to sustain the base. You need a large base of players to sustain any kind of competitiveness in any game. So having a competitive or having a casual base of players will do that. If you have a Zerg that is limiting content for that casual player that doesn't want to put in, not even that doesn't want to put in the effort, might not even have time to put in the effort, might put the effort in, but it doesn't matter because there's only 5 of them and they're playing as a small group of players, and it can limit the content. So
especially
I think,
with the emphasis on Pax Dei being catered to casual players to a degree. So yeah, continue.
Yeah. So it's having some kind of constraint, and you know, there have been a lot of answers to that stuff. You know, Last Oasis with the tiles, and there's been a limit to how many players can get in on the tile. New World has the limitation on wars specifically, where you can only have like 100 players on the battlefield, right? Or now it's 80, I think. There are ways to limit it, and you know, with PvP based encounter times, you can have certain periods of time during the day that you set to make yourself vulnerable, and part of that, you know, can help with Zerg mechanics as well. So there's I don't think we've got an answer yet for exactly how to solve it. but there's definitely been some really good solutions, and I hope that the Pax Dei devs are taking note of what works. And I hope that, honestly, I hope that they take some risks, especially in the alphas and the beta, and try some things out, and don't just go too heavy in one direction, but try some things and see if they work, and premise it with that and be like, yo, does this work? As opposed to just heavy hammer on the Zergs, because then that destroys some of the competitiveness.
I mean, if anything, this would be the time to do it, to discover that. But Wug, did you have anything to say about it?
I think it's a really fine line that the developers have to walk, right? Because like, as you guys were saying, like if you crush Zergs, that is a whole part of the ecosystem that gets torn from the game, and you're not generating content in a sandbox MMO, right? But on the other half of the ecosystem, you have the casual, the smaller groups that want to be competitive in you have the casual group, and then you have the competitive group, but that don't have the numbers of these communities that have been around for 20 years between Eve and every goddamn MMO in between, right? Like, for example, Iron Oceans has started in Pax Dei as a one-member clan. I think we're up to 42 right now after 2 weeks of recruiting. So we're getting there, and that's only going to increase over time as we start to get alpha gameplay, stuff like that. But that's still a fraction of what some of these clans are. So there needs to be a way to make the ecosystem work together without gimping a piece of it. So I don't have any strong opinions either way at the moment. It's more so I'm kind of with a lot of the things that are hot topics, like full loot PvP, monetization, pay to win, Zergs, all that stuff. I don't really have an opinion on, because I'm not the developer. They're going to develop the game that they want, and the people that want to fight the developers on that are more than welcome, and I'm still going to play the goddamn game regardless. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So at that point, whatever happens, and then we adjust our playstyle around it.
One way that I know Ashes of Creation is trying to kind of balance that, because I know some people in the Discord, the official Discord, have talked about like caps to clans and stuff like that. And I know that for Ashes of Creation specifically, one way that the devs there are kind of combating things is allowing there to be differences between clan caps, and having, if you're a member of a really large clan, then there are certain things that your clan can do that maybe a smaller clan can't do, and vice versa, more importantly. So smaller groups should still be made valuable. And I'm not fully versed on what the devs are kind of thinking in that regard, but I do know that they have some kind of thought process behind.
It was the intent that you could, as a smaller clan, get guild buffs, essentially, that compensate to the larger clan who can't endeavor in as many guild buffs as a smaller clan. So a small clan could get all these buffs that benefit them enough to compete to an extent with the larger clans. And obviously the larger clans can't get all those buffs because they already have those members who can compensate for them, right? So it's a little bit of a balancing system. And I believe in their game, I can't recall precisely, it's been a while, but I think it was 300 members was the cap on their clan limitation. So you can see how in that mindset you would want to instill something like that into your system. So the people that you are, I think there's a bit of an ego with Zerg. Sorry, this is a tangent. There's a bit of an ego with Zergs where they think, well, how come you didn't have enough members, right? How come you couldn't compensate enough members to combat us in the first place, right? But it's like, the developers are supposed to be reaching out to all these people and want them to play the game, but you have the mindset of, I want to win, right? That's the difference. Is like, obviously devs want to see you win, but if you're not open to realizing so many other people want to enjoy the game as well, then there's a lack of, like, there's a dissonance, right? So I think that is a good point, Eltari, about having these benefits to smaller clans, and especially not something that will give them an advantage, but to balance it most importantly, so everybody can play and everybody can be, to an extent, on the same playing field. That obviously just includes like gear and stats and etc.
And that can also tie in to, if they were able to allow players to be a part of or associate with several organizations, maybe put a cap on how many organizations you can be associated with, but maybe those associations can all get different types of advantages too. And this is now completely in my head canon, but a way that it can be balanced, like the Artisans Guild, maybe they are getting benefits to crafting if you have buffs or something like that. So being in that group is going to help you specifically in that area of gameplay, whereas the large city that you're a part of is completely enthralled in a completely different aspect of the game. That your player organization is what I mean, is associated with PvP or something like that, and maybe they don't have those kinds of things. So maybe being able to have like 2 or 3 organizations outside of your clan that you can be associated to and incur some of those benefits from could also help. And also it ties into the dev's core mechanic of social gameplay, and I feel like that would entice players to think of community as more than just a me versus they scenario, where it could also be we versus they instead, and different organizations and affiliations. You get that Game of Thrones style politicalness too, of, well, this person's with that city, but also with the church in this city, and like now all of a sudden people are backstabbing in the middle of places that they shouldn't, and it's emergent social gameplay,
which is a great segue, a fantastic segue into the espionage that's already begun into Pax Dei. So there has been espionage already that we've seen in certain guilds. Obviously at this point in time, it's not really needed, but it's scoping out competition for something that could happen within a matter of months for alpha, right? So I'll go ahead and begin the conversation on this more so. I think that I'd like to say, before even any remote gameplay is happening, like anything remotely, espionage at any time is a good thing for certain communities. If you have a drive to be number one, for example, I don't know if I should say it, but certain clans who are claiming to attack every single guild, every single player in the alpha launch phases, you're going to want to, as an opposition guild, look into that and see what they actually have going on and how prepared they are for, acting upon such things. So I think that I have respect for people who do it, just because you can never be too certain. And when you come to a position of like, was this useful or not? Even if it wasn't useful, it could have been, right? It could have given you information you would need on certain members, what they're capable of, the leadership, the structure, their, I don't know, logistics, right? Even if they don't have logistics, it's good to know that they don't, right? So there is a meaningful impact in doing such.
I definitely agree to an extent, but also disagree to an extent as well.
I'd love to hear that.
What's Iron Ocean's stance on espionage?
the prospect of espionage in general is a really profound, long con kind of way to play the game, right? Whether you're making a multiple Discord accounts 5 years ago for an espionage in another game, and you're logging into those accounts now to try and butter somebody up in another clan and get an invite, and then you just sit there for X amount of time, kind of figure them out. That would be a good way to do your espionage, right? But I think in alpha, right, or pre-alpha right now, I don't. There's obviously some inherent value, but there's also no value at the same time, right?
That's where we disagree. I see.
That's totally fine. It's just you're setting up a long con for a game where you don't know the gameplay loop. There's zero information on PvP. Zero information.
This is very true. Yep.
And but like you said, right? It's you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, and that's what these people are doing. Is they're taking these shots, ratting into these clans, and
sorry.
Select word.
No.
Continue.
And getting into these clans, and hopefully there's a payoff, once the game launches or whatever. But at the same time, unless you're totally interacting with their community, the only thing we have right now is Discord. And if you're not active, that's automatically a red flag for me. There's a couple people in IO where it's just like, okay, you haven't been super active in a while, so let me hit you up with a message, see what's going on. And it's like, oh yeah, I'm a trucker, and it's like, okay, cool.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm planning on playing Pax Dei on my phone in the truck.
Yeah, right.
So I think that. Sorry, go ahead.
Just to end off on my point, there's value, but there's no value at the same time.
Okay. Well, the counter argument I could see is not all espionage is about being in the game. It's about mental warfare. So the instilling a fear of what your members have said, what your members have done, what your members have claimed, right? And then finding these resources and unloading it onto them instills some mindset that, hey, like, are we like good? Like, are we competent? Are we a good guild? Like, what's going on? Because all these people have information about our community that it's making me question, as a member of this guild, are we in the right place right now? Are you telling the whole truth as a guild leader? Are you intending to do these things still, despite what has been said and with like actual visible proof? So I think that to an extent, yes, it's establishing territory before the game has been made. And that is one thing. Obviously, what's the benefit of doing that when we don't even know if there's a guarantee to the game, to the alpha, or anything like that? And obviously, that's a pessimistic outlook, but still, there is, to a degree, a benefit in not only maybe you could use this in a future competing guild or a future competing game, right? So let's say this guild has decided to revoke itself from Pax Dei and go into this other game that the same guilds are playing, right? You could just use that in the future. It doesn't stop at one game. It continues into however long you think it's useful,
That's definitely true. I guess my thought process was a little more short-sighted and revolving around Pax Dei, and where I think that is a valuable experience that you have for being around so long is you've seen a lot of these clans in these past games, and you're seeing them come into the Pax Dei Discord, and you're like, I know you, motherfucker. I know what you do. So yeah, I definitely can agree to your point a little bit more now based off of that.
I think if I can add in no.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm going to anyways. I'm in the bottom right of the screen. That means I can. So I think for starters, I'm an avid proponent of politicking in games. I during the time that the community I helped lead was in New World. I mean, we were playing the politics, trying to get cities and defense for those cities, because God knows the amount of players that were available to PvP at any point in time was always varying. And there's inciting that goes on in those, and people are infiltrating discords, and that's why all of our discords are armored to the teeth with verification processes.
I still haven't gotten my invite, by the way, just saying.
It's coming. But the important thing is that those things are a game mechanic for Pax Dei. The outside, and even more so for Pax Dei too, because of how the devs are supportive of community created content, this being one of them, the intrigue behind it. And one of the things that keeps EVE Online showing up in my inbox is X player steals $1 million worth of blank in EVE Online and takes it halfway across the galaxy to get exploded by someone else in a no-sec zone or something like that. And there is that level of espionage that exists. But as a result of that existing, I think it is important for some levels of espionage to exist in the game. Not because from any competitive aspect, which again, like, there are definitely players in the Golden Company, as I'm sure there are in Iron Oceans and Nexus, that are interested in infiltration and doing those espionage things that people will talk about in 5 years or 10 years, or how, whenever that, seed finally comes to fruition. But it's important for us to have these mechanics, even if it's the Discord PvP and the infiltration and all of that. How does that translate to the actual gameplay? And the devs need to be able to test that as well, because it is going to be a critical component.
It's an impact.
Yeah, and having the ability for them to test it. So granted, like, what I would hate to see is someone going in and infiltrating a Discord or something like that, a community, and kind of ripping it apart from the inside. What I would like to see, like, that would be bad, because that's potentially removing people from playing Pax Dei when it releases, right?
Okay, I can see that perspective.
Yeah.
Correct, yeah.
But having someone who's inciting and testing, how do I actually do that in game? What are the ways that I can get around doing things? Be it, I'm placing my parcel in the middle of a city, and I fully intend to, at one point in time, after this group becomes very collected, I'm going to try and get them to build all of their stuff on my plot, right? And then how does that tie in to when they eventually are like, screw you guys, I've been a red coat the entire time, and now your guild bank was built on this dude's plot, and they're about to walk away with all of the privileges and the access and all of this stuff. There needs to be systems to balance that.
To prevent that. Okay, so I can entirely agree that there needs to be two-factor authentication systems or something like something that stops the ability to do stuff like that. I do enjoy espionage to a degree in where it impacts the action or the social dynamic of it, right? One thing that I was going to say prior was that in my mind, it's like, okay, for guilds who refuse to espionage or spy whatsoever, okay, your morality is there. I understand that. But that doesn't negate people coming into your Discord and doing it against you and having advantage on your callouts or anything such as that. So I think that within that mindset, you have to, at some point, either build your walls high enough they can't climb over, or build your walls to a certain point that you can, that's not the correct analogy, but like to pursue them to a degree where you are on the same playing field once again, so that their advantage isn't as much as an advantage because you have somebody else doing something more or compensating more that you can benefit from. But definitely, I do think that they should have restrictions and limitations to accessibility on guild stores, on, kicking people from the guild and stuff like that. Like, if you imagine, like, somebody just you gave them officer and they just kicked all your guild members, right? I think to an extent, yeah, that would be terrifying, right? It's a scary thing, but definitely have that in mind as developers, that these things do happen whether you've experienced it or not, you know?
I definitely agree. And real quick, I do want to shout out two things. First off, a shout out to Chili's Tavern for sponsoring a giveaway for Diablo 4's Ultimate Edition that was won by Odemption in the Iron Oceans Discord. So over here will be a link to Chili's Tavern if you want to check them out. And then Mex is still doing a giveaway in the Pax Dei Discord. You can check out their website right here. But if you guys still want to get into that giveaway, go ahead and join the Iron Oceans Discord and go ahead and jump in on the giveaway. And then you guys can look at their website and see if their products are something that you're in.
Woo, free things! Yay! I love giveaways.
Giveaways are sick, dude. Anyway,
I'm upset I didn't get that Diablo 4 Unlimited. I was booking on it. I was like, I'm gonna get it. It's okay. You even told me in the last podcast, Wug, you were like, Eltari, if you go and sign up, you will get it. And I went and signed up, and then I didn't get it. So now my trust in you is a little bit damaged.
That's all right. Odemption deserves it. That guy's so awesome. I love Odemption, man.
It was a great acceptance. It was a great acceptance speech, actually. Like, I'm a student. I needed this. I was like, yes,
Definitely.
dude, yes.
That's great. That's fantastic.
I'd like to thank my mom.
I love Ode no matter what, but stop calling me an AI, okay? I can only do that. You're bullying me, okay, Ode?
Definitely. Before we kind of wrap up, I do want to give Zara an opportunity to ask her questions. She did effort into her own questions, so hit us.
So a lot of the questions that I did have kind of integrate into the prior discussion. Most of them are clan wars, clan sieges. So with the limited amount of information that we do have, we can anticipate to some small extent that clan wars will happen, clan v clan, right? I'd like to know, just briefly, what you guys would like to anticipate from that, what you would like to have for your community to participate in that.
All right.
Definitely. I mean, for me personally, everything has to be done right. And with the experience we had with New World where things weren't done right, it really hurt the overall ecosystem of the game. So if we do have clan wars, if we do have clan sieges, city sieges and stuff like that, it really just needs to be done right.
Mm-hmm.
And because I think it could add a lot to the game. I think it could add a lot of opportunity, and a lot of bragging, right? And be able to be like, yeah, we beat this clan of 500 people.
100%.
While we were only 250 strong, we defended our space. This is our area. But as long as it's done right, I would love to see it implemented into the game as well.
Yep. Eltari?
I think so. We know for a fact that the devs intend for things like castles and outposts to exist in the game. My theory is it'll exist outside of the heartlands, and there'll be these temporary structures that we can
fingers
fight over.
crossed, right?
Yeah, fingers crossed. And I think that a lot of games have kind of reached towards greatness in how these kind of more official competitions can occur. And I think that if executed appropriately, it could truly be something great, and execution is key here. The big ones are, offline rating sucks. Nobody likes being offline rated. So one of the best things that has kind of emerged kind of since last Oasis is having timers that you as a guild set. And, obviously, that can be exploited to where you set it at 4:00 in the morning on a Monday. Like, nobody's going to show up to try and go and fight you. But having vulnerability timers, or having however it's done, where you can plan for you to be at your best and for them to be at their best. Mm-hmm. That's where strategy comes in. That's where you sit there and
playing field.
Yeah, and it's a chess game, and that's the fun part. I love that competitive wars, especially in New World, even though the balancing was so weird for so long. Like, knowing, and again, having espionage too, knowing what the enemy is bringing and being able to counter that and counter build, and the different call outs and the stuff like that you would only be able to get if it was a more organized structural type of PvP. But then also have components where, you know, you're just walking around and there's this emergent battle that starts happening, and people start, like in Eve, people start, it's one person's shipping boat that or ship that, like, just a container ship that gets attacked, and these guys are like, oh fuck that, like, I'm calling in my guys, and then those guys show up, and that guy's like, oh, I'm calling in my guys, and then at the end of it, and then, you know, 2 weeks later you read a Forbes article about how $500,000 worth of ships were destroyed in a battle that took over 3 hours. Like, the time had to dilute to, you know, every minute was a second or something like that.
I think especially so to bandwagon off of that briefly, Last Oasis, if you see a single dinghy, right, in the field that isn't under your colors or your flags, you're like, yo, bros, there's a dinghy.
It's happening.
It is happening. And then you would scour the lands also, and you would see like a retired ship or something like that and think like, oh, we're going to get some content, but nobody's there, right? So I'd like to see more situations where things like that will happen. Like, things like that will just spontaneously, you know, happen.
Turn into massive battles. And Last Oasis did it really well. I think there's a really well-known Shroud video back, you know, for the 2 days that he played Last Oasis, where
2 days.
It was like someone was on a dinghy and someone got hit, and then someone found out somehow that Shroud was there. So obviously 30 billion people all show up.
Right.
But what was cool about it is, as the walkers were getting destroyed and stuff, they turned into more battlefields. You had a walker that's downed on the side, and people are using it as cover to get away from ballista shots. And you have pushes and pulls that are going into these fights. And that level of immersion in wars and in gameplay, I hope is something that Pax Dei can kind of capture. I don't know how they do it, but maybe it's with magic. Maybe it's just with
Caravans,
how the environment.
Who knows, right? Yeah.
But so, it would be cool.
Go ahead, Vlad.
I'm going to wrap this topic up. So if you aren't going to...
I was going to do that first, okay?
My ending points on it is immersive PvP, 100% mandatory, right?
200%.
Fun, engaging, immersive PvP, super important. Going back to the timers that Altari was talking about, it needs to be done right, man. No one wants to log into a game, sign up for a war, have war the next day, win the war, get put back into war the next fucking day, and just have this endless war cycle that's to maintain their territory. So, like, offlining also sucks. So if there was an opportunity to maybe limit the amount of wars a single city can go through without ruining the balance of the game, that would be, I think, a pretty good system there.
I agree.
Prevents burnout too. You don't want your PvPers to burn out.
Absolutely not.
So to move forward, some of the prior topics that we have had kind of correlate to the mindset of working with other communities, and especially so, I've seen multiple mercenary guilds formulate their recruitment posts, and in a game that is a sandbox, and also when we mention PvE clans primarily being PvE, how beneficial would this actually work? Would people actually outsource mercenary clans to help them at certain times, whereas some communities just have good relations with other guilds and just work together despite there no transaction made?
I definitely think you have to be really committed to RP to, one, hire a mercenary clan, and two, be in a mercenary clan, right? That is like me personally, one clan is always gonna eventually align with another clan, right? And especially if you're explicitly a PvP clan and you're outsourcing to, let's say, Artisans Guild, who is a manufacturer for your own...
Cyanide, what's up? Sorry.
For your
Go ahead.
own a manufacturer for your own guild, why the fuck would you not protect them, right? There should be no reason
Mm-hmm.
why they have to hire anybody, because they're also funding you for wars or PvP or whatever. Um, I think it would be like a really niche scenario where there's a PvE clan that wants to venture out and do something in PvP where they're like, oh, I'm gonna hire PvP clan because I
Yeah.
don't know anybody else. But that's not to say that there won't be the opportunity for that to really thrive and or shine.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it's going to be a minority gameplay
I think
component.
most importantly, for at least my perspective, in my guild recruitment post, I say that there will be a call to arms and you will have to take action regardless of your position in the guild. If you're primarily PvE or not, you will have to battle at some point if we need it, right? So I think that most guilds that I've seen do that. They do have each member participating in that because it's required. But you're not going to say in a guild, hey, we're being clan v clan right now. Only 3 of us can fight because we're interested in PvP. How are you going to prevail in that regard? It doesn't make sense. So, but also to play into the mercenary aspect, you could potentially hire those people if you do not want to touch PvP whatsoever because the loss is too big for you. So I do see it being of some use, but I don't think it's necessarily practical, especially with how many communities are going to intend to be self-sufficient.
I think, just to be devil's advocate here, the one thing that we do know from the devs is that players will be able to make their own contracts in game. Like that's an in-game system.
Yeah.
The 2 ways that questing will work is, one, you find something in the world that leads you to something else, and it's this emergent kind of PvE content. But then also we know that there will be at least PvE contracts that players can take out for, hey, I need 500 logs, or go kill 30 rabbits to get the pelts and bring them back to me. And that there might even be a bounty system associated with not completing said task. So I think that extending that into PvP, requesting, hey, I have to travel from point A to point B and it goes through a PvP zone. I'm requesting protection, and being able to put those contracts out. Mm-hmm. I think there will be a niche for smaller PvP based groups to agree. Fill that, where they're exquisitely skilled in, smaller group tactics. They're specialized in that kind of thing. They're optimized for that kind of thing, and they can take contracts out like that. That'll fill that spot.
Especially if they don't plan on having territory to the degree of like, we need to defend against whole other guilds. If they're doing a whole small niche thing where there's like 5 to 10 of them and they're all geared out to their fucking asses, sorry, they could provide some benefit to those people who need it, such as escorting caravans, etc., or like helping you farm materials in a zone and protect you, assuming there would be PvP zones, right? But definitely, yeah. Did we want to transition to the next discussion?
Yeah, for sure. But real quick, I definitely think Eltari's point where there are smaller PvP niches, that definitely kind of just changed my opinion a little bit on the matter. Because they're not going to participate on large scale fighting.
Well, maybe they will, and they'll be hired to have more arms. You never know, and it could still be beneficial.
As like a sole clan, right? But they can be hired, and they might fit the niche additionally as a mercenary for travel as well. That is a good, very emergent RP kind of opportunity as well.
Yeah, for a really quick example, like with the Golden Company, I try and pride our group on honor and all of that. And in past games, we've literally supplied forces to both sides of a fight. And neither side at the end of it has thought any different of us, like pulling our punches or something like that, and shifting the tide of a war in one way or the other. So I definitely think that people, like players, specific groups, maybe even the Gold Company, will make a name for themselves as being, you see that freaking tag on the battlefield, get the fuck out of there. Like, that person is decked to the teeth. They have been paid for by like 30 other groups to just bust a to just be crazy. I was gonna say something else. To go crazy.
You are down bad diabolical.
on the battlefield, and you see him. You see him on the battlefield, and you're like, nope, I am fighting in that direction now, because they have that, you know, aura about them that you don't want to be near that person. And I see definitely a space, and yes, it is RP-ish, right? You see that person, but the cool thing about sandbox and social games is that, you know, a lot of us have experience in these communities now for multiple years. For me, it started in Last Oasis, honestly. And you start seeing these same tags show up over and over and over again. And where you see them kind of translates over to the next game or to the next thing.
Yeah, 100%.
So it'll be cool to see that happen in Pax Dei, and I think there's a space for mercenary companies as a result.
100%. I do think that to a degree they can optimize their capabilities. The real question is, can they? Are they willing to, right? Compete with people who are in mass Zergs who have like a sec of 30 people who are just doing the same thing. But let's go ahead and transition into the last two topics of this discussion. So toxicity, right? We all love it. System of a Down, right? Perfect, right? So in Clan Wars, I'm curious to see if they intend on having systems where you can gloat, specifically leaderboards that you could use maybe on Discord to, you know, instigate something with other communities. Like, hey, you guys got effed this many times, right?
Flip it out.
Yeah, it's all here on the game stats. Can I gloat on that? Or even just like, let's say I'm 1v1ing a person, right? Will there be animations or like phrases you could say that are like, haha, take VL or something, right? Yeah, exactly, right? So I do think that I'd like to see aspects like that. What do you guys think?
If I could just answer really quickly, I think that I would really like to see is players tracking stats, keeping histories in the game, and there being a almost formal way to do that. Kind of write it down in the history books that on this day this battle occurred.
For a server,
exactly. And server lore is a really, really important thing for communities, and there is that like ancient guy with the long beard that's just like creaking around the server, and he's like, I remember the day that
back in my day
the wall fell. And I think that having that is critically important. I think that having statistics and metrics as a competitive player, and a leader of a competitive organization, that we need stats. It's just that simple. You need stats, and providing stats will make my life easier. So, you know, fingers crossed that the devs will provide that. But then, you know, obviously you can go into the Discord and just be like, and referencing this screen cap, here you go. And you are a definitive loser. Like, stop talking and shut them down. So that I would hope there's some of that for sure.
Definitely. I totally agree with like having a robust tracking. Like, I think that was a failure with New World, is like you would get into this war, you would see your stats for half a second before the whole lobby would break and you'd get kicked out. So you're trying to find
screen cap
with 200 fucking people, and you just lose it after that because the lobby breaks down or whatever, and you lose it because it's a dog shit game. So
it's a great game.
A robust logging system of everything. Yes. You know, an achievement portal, a stat tracker for wars, kills, anything like that. Now, if that's not going to happen, there has been a conversation about an API being created, and depending on how robust that is, I'm sure somebody will make an add-on, and then if it gets popular enough, everyone will use it.
So, as far as it's not going to happen, does that mean there's going to be absolutely no like noteboard or like something that says that Because in Conqueror's Blade, you could go into your main city and see the top contenders, the top guild, the top player. Would they do something along the lines of that, or is that completely, Zilch?
There's got to be. They've got to plan it.
Yeah. Okay. So that is something that I would like to see as well. If you're going into a village you designed, right? Let's see if we can
erect a statue to your
glory. Or anything like of significance that correlates to the battles that you've had. Obviously, this is being said without, once again, knowing anything about PvP, right? To a degree, besides it's being opt-in.
It would be really cool if also, that extends to historical battle sites in the game as well, like locations where really big things happen. And I hope, and from what it sounds like, the devs do have an intention to kind of personally modify shards as the world kind of expands. And it would be so cool. You have a massive battle, and then there's a scar, right? A landmark or something that kind of enshrines that, and players can point to it and be like, I was there on that day.
That would feel really gratifying.
Yeah.
Wug, so next question, you get to answer first because you're so special. But the developers have hinted at, in a prior post I made in the dev questions, about clan leveling systems and clan halls. So they basically insinuated to some degree they might have intentions of having a leveling system where you can unlock potentially schematics for having a guild hall or a clan related, items or buildings. First question would be, what are your opinions about leveling systems for clans? And second question would be, what kind of resources would you like them to provide for that?
Yes.
Yes.
No, I think clan leveling systems would be a fantastic addition. I think it is almost a mandatory thing in a sandbox game, where you have so much opportunity to do XYZ. Some players will start to lose focus on what they need to be doing. And I think having a clan leveling system for your community is a good incentive for everybody in their clan and for every clan to, quote unquote, do this activity to level up, because this level up enables us to get XYZ. Some examples of those could be your clans could be soft locked in terms of the capacity of members. That your starting capacity could be like 50. And each time you level up, maybe adds 10 to 15 more members or some sort of, up to a certain point. But it could also unlock blueprints, upgrades for crafting stations, so many different things that could happen. And I think this is a system that really, really needs to launch with the game. It needs to be robust. It needs to be great. And I will fall in love with this game if it has it.
Okay, Elsari?
Guild banks being able to get unlocked through guild tiers and stuff like that. Having access to specific doors maybe that you can unlock in crafting that allow you to grant permission based access to your organization. That's super big. I think part of that also goes into player made contracts. I think giving leaders of organizations the ability to set goals for their guild, and obviously it could get really complex really quick, but being able to be like, hey, we need 500 logs to finish building the town square, go do that, and then completing objectives gives you XP towards unlocking stuff for your community. Being able to make kind of have that tie-in, I think would be really, really good for the game, both in terms of bringing people together and giving them something to do, right? Because as clan leaders,
the world.
Exactly. As clan leaders, our main goal is to generate content for our players. So giving us a structure to do that in game makes that job easier for us. So I'm all for it.
I will say, to some degree, being burned by Korean MMORPGs, You have many leveling systems in different Korean MMOs that it becomes tedious and monotonous to pursue these requirements.
Obscure goals.
Yeah, just for filler content. If they could compensate and make it in a way that is actually fruitful to the player and to the environment, I would 100% appreciate that. But if I'm going to a zone required by my guild leveling system to kill the same mob 122 times, I will rip my own hair out and, just die. But
I
to be fair, regardless, sorry, go ahead about your discussion.
I disagree to an extent. The cost should be high. It should take multiple members. It should take multiple trips. It should take a ton of energy, effort, and resources to complete this task, right? But the task the task has to cost a lot, but also be fruitful in terms of you need to be rewarded for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Going and killing 122 deer in a forest split between 5 members, could take a little bit depending on like respawns and stuff like that.
Yeah, of course.
But the reward you get from that, that potential reward could be.
It depends on what the reward is,
Exactly. Exactly.
I do agree. So I don't think there's much of a disagreement. I think that it's more so if, as a player in a 15-member community, how are they going to scale it so it's fair to those 15 players? Whereas 300-player guilds can easily do these tasks and level up to max, right? Obviously, I think that there is a balance in that to some degree. Like, obviously, you have 300 members versus 15-member guild, but you have to compensate to a degree so it's worth leveling up. Because let's say, like, this guild has 15 players and they have a small village. Why shouldn't they get a guild hall? Like, why shouldn't they have these, the ability to access these things?
I think scalable contracts would be a huge benefit to the game, right? The contract scales to the amount of members. Let's just say there's a base rate of this task for a 15-person clan is like, go do this activity 50 times or go collect 50, right? And then it's multiplied per additional members added to the clan, and it almost infinitely scales to the cap of the clans.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be a way where it keeps it fair and it incentivizes almost being a smaller clan because it's not as hard to do.
Yeah. But in a balanced system, it's not expected for a 15-member clan to obviously remain competent in a siege where a 100-member clan is attacking them, despite them having the same levels of progress, right? So I think that is fair to an extent, but obviously we had these discussions prior of outsourcing to other communities, etc., and there's ways to get around that. Altari. Yeah, Altari.
Yeah, I think having it's kind of a slippery slope, right? So I think that every clan should be entitled to certain, privileges that show you how they do things in game, right? So if they have access to a guild bank, they had to work for that. If they have access to, a certain, maybe it could even be tied into like how many plots can be assigned to a specific group of players. Like the larger the plot, the larger the size of the amount of merged plots that you have to complete a project that allows for more plots to be able to be added. That could scale things in a way, and the larger and larger that the city gets, the larger, the more resources that have to be poured into it. As a result, if you're a smaller group of players, it's going to take in order to get to your maximum size, maybe it's just 15 plots collected, it's going to take you X amount of time. For a larger group, they're obviously going to get to that point a lot quicker. They'll get there quicker, but it doesn't matter because the amount of time that it's going to take them to get to the maximum plot size to be, efficient with the 100, 300 players that they have, it's going to take them time to get there. So they can't just instantly get there. It's going to be scaled on resource value. So I think scaling it is important, but also realizing that a 15-member group of people should not be doing the same things that a 300 group of people should do. And
they intend to eventually, which would require them to actively recruit and get their name out there, etc. But
so nothing to stop. Obviously, don't stop anyone. And God, if someone wants to as 15 players get their town square or whatever, I'm just calling it a town square for the purpose of this, get that to the same level as someone who has 100 players getting it to the top tier or whatever, you can do that. It's going to take you a lot longer to do, and the value added for doing it isn't going to help, because if you don't have people to fill those slots anyways, then you're not really benefiting yourself. So I think having a component of that, it would be a good idea, and definitely scaling content based on the number of people should be important too. But the reassuring thing is that the devs have stated multiple times that they want the gameplay loops to both be rewarding and attainable for groups that are both small and large. I agree as well.
I hope that is.
Yeah. It's just what your goals are, and are they tenable for the size that you have?
I will go back to elaborate on Wuglet's counterpoint about what I initially said, and I want to rephrase it in the sense of, from my personal perspective, that I obviously think that there should be a level of difficulty in getting these levels and progression within your guild or clan, but at the same time not be monotonous and tedious. All I'm saying essentially is, from what I hope the devs hear me, is I want it to be meaningful and rewarding. I really want that. I want my efforts to have been fruitful. So I will slay those 112 the tree creatures or whatever you asked me to do, but I want to feel a sense of gratification after having done so. So yes, I agree completely.
Definitely. It's all about a proper balance and rewarding the cost of your time.
100%.
That is just inherent positive gameplay right there. I think we definitely hit the 30-minute mark on the podcast, guys.
1 hour and 30 minutes.
Exactly. Before I wrap it up, did you guys have any kind of like last thoughts?
Do we want to give like a quick rundown of our groups again really quick as well?
Okay. Yep. Go ahead, Altari.
Yeah. So the Golden Company, that's the organization that I run, or am planning on running in Pax Dei. We are a competitive group that are based around establishing a very well thought out, very well planned city in Pax Dei. We want it to be one of the best on our shard, and as a result, it'll involve us in many aspects of gameplay, PvP, PvE. We're planning on building several large projects, the Great Library being one of them, and we really just want to be a source of enjoyment for both casual players and competitive ones. And if you're interested, be sure to reach out to me on Discord. My information will be on screen now. And we're just looking to make some fun content to enjoy for many years to come in Pax Dei.
Fantastic. I love it. I love guilds. So much fun. So Nexus, we are currently actively recruiting for competitive players in general. Whether you're casual, you have the intent to compete to some degree with other players in the environment. One thing I will say is be conscious if you are looking for a guild who you join and what their intents are and if they have credibility, especially if they're competitive. For Nexus, me specifically, ask me anything and I will answer truthfully. If you're interested, I will get you set up immediately in our Discord and we will have intents to play the alpha together, hopefully, fingers crossed if we're lucky. But we are a competitive PvP, PvE guild, and we are accepting members from hardcore scale to casual scale, anything in between, and we have a place for you. Wow, thank you. I'm bowing, but you can't see me.
And I'll kind of cap it off with Iron Oceans is open for recruitment as well. We kind of bridge the well, there's a lot of similarities between Nexus and Iron Oceans, just very thematically different. But we are open, always recruiting. I'm not going to plug myself too much just because.
I mean, it's your podcast, Lucky. Do what you want.
This whole podcast is a plug. So if you want more information, just reach out. If you guys would like to inquire about the Golden Company and Nexus, you are more than welcome to go and do so as well.
Yep, you can reach me on discord.gg/Nexus, or if you're looking for our website, it's nexus-guild.com.
Links down below.
Easy peasy. Popping up on screen. But with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. I want to say thank you everyone that made it to the end of the video. This, yeah, it was a long one. I don't even think we have a lot of cuts to do on this one. I think it's just going to be kind of raw.
It's straight content.
We're going.
I appreciate everyone listening. There was I think there was a lot of good conversation, a lot of perspectives that may have differed, but may have kind of been like, damn, that was actually pretty good. Nice. I like that. So go ahead, and if you like the video, go ahead and like it, subscribe. If you didn't, don't.
Bye, guys. See
Until
ya.
next time. See y'all.
Bam.
Boom.
Wow.
Bro, I am